Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another BBA webinar. This time we're doing things a little bit differently, and you're seeing a different face in front of the camera, probably not someone you've seen before, but welcome. My name is Katie Roberts, and I'm in the marketing team at the BBA, and I'm joined on the other side of the screen, whichever side you're looking at, by Claire Azelwood, our quality management strategist. So you would have seen that recently we wrote to all our partners and all our clients, letting you know about some changes ahead relating to the BBA Agrément and HAPAS certificate schemes, following some discussions we've been having with UKAS, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service. And so if you're a certificate holder, you would no doubt have quite a few questions around what that means for you, the timeline over what, in terms of when these changes might take place, and a whole bunch of other things around what that means to industry and the acceptance of the certificates and all of that. So we wanted to get together today to answer as many of those questions as we can. A huge thank you to some of you who have already sent questions up front, and we've got those on the list. But if you have any questions throughout this webinar that you'd like Claire, I'd like to say and I, but it's really Claire because Claire is the subject matter expert over here. If you'd like us to answer or go through, please just log them in the questions tab. You should see the little questions tab on your screen. So feel free to log them there, and once we've gone through our initial set of questions, I'll pick up some more from there. Any questions that we don't get to today, we've only got the hour, it's quite a big subject to cover. Any questions we don't get to, we will collate all of them and send them out, answer them and send them out to everybody that's registered for this webinar as well, so that you've got them to hand. Also, this is being recorded, so once it's all done, we'll send the recording as well so that you can rewatch it or share with any colleagues that may have missed it today. So any other housekeeping that I need to think about? Questions done? No, other than that, I think, Claire, I'm going to jump straight in. So welcome and thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
Brilliant. So the first question, I think to kind of set the scene for us, Claire, if you could just take us through, give us a quick rundown of what is happening and why are these changes being made?
Sure. So this was initiated by UKAS, by the our national accreditation body, reviewing sort of in general the approvals processes and schemes for construction products. And they were looking at Agrément, I think, with a fresh perspective, a fresh set of eyes, and decided that its current accreditation, which is it's delivered under accreditation to ISO 17065, which is specifically product certification, it didn't necessarily fit there perfectly. And there were two or three reasons for that. One is that because of the kind of scheme we run, where we need to have a bit of flexibility because a slightly different product comes along or a slightly different application, we need to assess it, decide how the product should be assessed. It means that we don't always have predetermined published criteria in detail for each product type, because we need the agility to respond to a novel application or an innovative product. And 17065 actually doesn't manage that very well. It likes predetermined criteria. The other thing, though, very importantly for Agrément, because it is a fitness for purpose scheme, is that we need to be able to apply professional judgment. And 17065 product certification, it's really designed around a kind of certificate of conformity type scheme. So, is it this, is it that, does it reach this level, as opposed to the application of sort of engineering principles and professional judgment. So we were having these discussions, and really there were three approaches we could take. We could keep the scheme completely as it is, but come outside of accreditation completely. Or we could simplify the scheme, make it much more like a checkbox certificate of conformity type scheme. Or we could aim to amend the scheme slightly so that we can keep it under accreditation, but just to a different conformity assessment standard. Now we've always, obviously Agrément existed for decades before we were the accreditation, so it's well established, but we've always been champions of having accreditation so that there are standards that people can see are being applied. we didn't want to become unaccredited, and we also didn't want to water down the scheme. We wanted to keep the technical rigour and the kind of excellence that we've always aspired to. So instead, we've spent the last few months reworking the scheme so that it goes under a different conformity assessment standard, ISO 17020. That's now, that process has been complete. So there's no gap in accreditation. We've just moved Agrément to 17020. One comment I would make for those of you with HAPAS certificates is that HAPAS has stayed under 17065, and that's because for the highways scheme, we do have much more tightly defined technical specifications that are available already. So HAPAS is staying where it is. It's rather than being a sector within the Agrément scheme, it's now a standalone scheme essentially. Both of them, there'll be some changes we can talk through in terms of the certificate format. But yeah, we're pleased about HAPAS because, of course, National Highways specifies 17065, so it was the right decision to split HAPAS away from the rest of Agrément.
Okay, thanks for that, Claire. I think one of the other questions that came through, and probably one that will be on many of our certificate holders' minds, is around the acceptance in industry. So some questions we've received already talk to the relevance of the certificates going forward. So for example, one in particular asks how this impacts on the level of reliance that the industry places on Agrément certification as evidence of fitness for purpose and building regulations compliance going forward. What does that mean in industry as a whole?
It shouldn't change, essentially. We're still judging fitness for purpose, we're still judging compliance with the building regulations and the different applications. And we've also been, obviously we've been involving other stakeholders, bodies who recognise and use the Agrément certificate as a mark of approval. So people have been made aware what's happening and why. We've checked that where people prefer things to be accredited, that they're still happy with the accreditation we've got, and they are. So okay. I'm not expecting any disadvantage.
And I think it's also fair to add here as well that we are spending a lot of time working with industry to also help them understand what the changes mean, and to draw close to them to help through this process as well, particularly the likes of warranty providers, building control, all the people that typically would come to us to verify, check, specify, all that kind of thing. So we're working very closely with them and a lot of our partners as well.
Yeah.
Just talk, Claire, if you wouldn't mind, just talk through the timeline and cost implications, if any, of what this process now looks like, what our clients have to do, if they need to do anything on their own, on their side. Just talk us through what that might look like from a what's next point of view.
Sure. So for HAPAS certificates, there is a slightly amended format of the certificate. Each product sheet will, at its next reissue, will move into the new style. So whether that's a reissue that's happening as part of another job, or whether it's a reissue following review, the triennial review. So the aim is that by the end of 3 years from now, all the HAPAS product sheets should be in the new style. For Agrément, it's a two-stage process. Initially, Agrément certificates will all have an amendment, basically it's an editorial administrative amendment, and that will happen before the end of June, so that, over the next 6 or 7 months. And that is just to change the reference to accreditation on the certificate so that it's correct fairly quickly. Clients don't have to do anything to trigger that. It will happen automatically. We'll be going through essentially product code at a time and making those amendments, and certificate holders will be sent the new version as soon as it's available, and those will be the ones on the website. And then, similar to HAPAS, Agrément certificates at their next reissue, whether that's at review or beforehand will come out in the new style. So there might even be a patch where you have multiple product sheets in a certificate, and you might have a mix of the current and the new style, but that'll only happen for a short period of time. Okay. There isn't a cost associated with doing the amendments. We'll just get through them as quickly as we can.
Okay, and it's probably a good time, you mentioned the style of the certificates. It's probably a good time to bring up what the look and feel of these certificates might look like. So just for our viewers, Claire has prepared two certificates as examples that we can show you. Claire, are you happy for me to go ahead and just share those, and you can just talk us through any changes?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just bear with me a second while I figure out how to get the second screen shared. There you go. You should now be seeing a certificate of Rockwool Limited, for example, an Agrément certificate. Claire, can you see that?
I can just about see that. Right, so you'll be able to see that it's broadly looks the same, but the front page has changed somewhat. It now describes what the certificate includes on the left, and rather than the individual key factors that would have been different for each certificate, we've moved more over to the UKTA approach of using the CPR's Annex 1 basic work requirements. So the key factors, you may not be able to see them there, but they're the key factors in the middle on the right. Those are based on the CPR basic requirements. And what this means is one of the changes that we've been asked, quite apart from this recent review, is that certificates are more obviously comparable. So that this means that the key factor sections in every certificate will be standardized now. You will, of course, have all the normal subheadings of the individual factors, characteristics that we're looking at within those key factors. We've still got that's fine, we'll scroll down a bit. We've still got the building regulations, a statement of fulfillment of a requirement, and then we go into the assessment description. So what you can see is that we'll have all of the sections there. If it's not relevant to a product, we'll just say it's not applicable. But what it means is that section 3 is always hygiene and health in every certificate. There are some cosmetic changes. You'll see that we've now got a footer which has the full certificate number, page numbers, which wasn't on there before. It's got the same installation, workmanship, manufacture, and so on. We then have, you can just scroll up to that. Yeah. We then have a separate section. Now, one of the things that we've always had in Agrément certificates is I guess, supplementary information. So it's information that is useful, it's complementary to the assessed data, but it isn't necessarily something that we've assessed ourselves. It might be something that we're reporting for other people. So this has come out now into a separate section. So things like information here about UKCA marking, maybe 9001 for the manufacturer. That's now in a separate section, and that's for accreditation reasons. But so the information is still there. It's just separated out from the assessed data. And yes, thank you to any client that I've picked on to use as an example.
Perfect. And if we switch over to the HAPAS view, the HAPAS example.
Yeah. So HAPAS is more similar. I think there are fewer changes here. The front page has changed slightly. But as you go through, you'll see it's very much the same structure that you'll be familiar with.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Claire.
So I think they're substantively the same, but what we've had to do is move some of the sections around so that it's some of the statements are clearer for the accreditation.
Okay, perfect. Just stop sharing that. You should now see Claire and I again back on your screen. Thank you for that, Claire. That's great. Just a quick one. Are the certificate numbers themselves changing?
Certificate numbers are staying the same. What we will be doing, though, is making sure that the issue number, we will be referring to the issue number to identify it, but to make sure the latest issue is the one being referred to. But it won't change the certificate numbers as used by the certificate holders, nor the number on the logo. So it shouldn't have any impact. But for us internally, we will be identifying it more by the issue number than we previously did.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. I see we've got 3 questions that have come in. The first one is from Stuart, and this relates actually more to UKCA, which is obviously a different type of scheme completely. But I'm going to ask the question anyway. So, will the tests that are carried out under AVCP3 at EU notified labs remain valid for UKCA? A slightly different subject matter. I don't know if that's something you can answer, Claire. If not, we can always take it and come back with an answer on that.
At the moment, they're still acceptable, but I'm not sure that has extended into 2023 yet. So earlier in the year, they extended it through to the end of this year. We're waiting to hear if there's going to be another extension.
And on that note, I'm going to take this chance. We are going to be running a UKCA webinar within the next couple of weeks as well. We'll be sending out information on that soon. There are a couple of, there's no major changes yet. We're all kind of waiting for that extension. We're waiting on information and confirmation, but there are a couple of other things, common questions that we're getting through from people saying, well, what does this look like? What does that mean? How, and we're going to just have a general check-in again with Jason. You may already know Jason Harries, who's spoken on UKCA quite a bit before. So keep a lookout for that notification. We'll make sure we invite you to that webinar as well. Next question, super quickly, from Sandra Lawson. Do Agrément still assess against NHBC standards?
Yes.
Beautiful. Not sweet. I hope that answered your question, Sandra. Yes, it does.
We have, as the certificates come out in new style, some of those, as usual, will go to NHBC for external comment.
Okay, perfect. And I think an NHBC are just one of those organizations that we've been working closely with as well throughout this process to just check in and make sure that we're aligned. The last question, not the last one, if anyone, last call for any questions, by the way, if anyone else has questions based on what Claire has spoken about today, feel free to pop them in the questions tab. But the last one that I can see is, could you please send us future typical Agrément formats? Could you please send us the future typical Agrément format as well as HAPAS? Oh, send you the example of the certificates is the question. I'm sure that's fine, Claire.
Yeah. I might remove the company information, but that's
we'll send you at least a mock-up of what it will look like just for your records. Yeah, no problem. Okay, sorry, apologies for that, Hans Verlalem. I've been asked to just speak a little slower. As Claire will attest to, I do tend to speak very quickly, so apologies for that. Hans Verlalem, we will make sure that we send all the answers again in an email, just in case anything has been missed. So, perfect. I think there are no other questions in the block, so I will literally give it 10 more seconds if anyone else has any questions. But unless there's anything else that we want to cover, countdown. I feel like I need to play Girl from Ipanema while we wait for anything to come through. Not yet, but just in closing, I just, Claire, thank you for your time. Thank you for providing the clarity. If anybody does still, if you have more questions that come up after this, yes, great, 2 more questions come through. If you do have any other questions, you can still email them through. It's probably easier if you just email them to hello@bbacerts.co.uk, and we can add them to the list and collate them all and send all the questions answered through. And reminder, this is obviously recorded, so we'll be sure to send the recordings through as well. There is a question from Rosalind Richardson. So let me just quickly have a look at this. Is the BBA adopting any version control for certificates to enable access to previous versions of certificates in line with CCPI Clause 2?
Probably not immediately. We've always had the approach that that we would only want the current version to be referenced usually, so it's the latest one. We do, but the point about having the issue numbers and making those more prominent is specifically so that there's a more clearly auditable trail of the different editions. We've also are more likely, for example, if a product has been removed from a product sheet, that would become a new product sheet now, rather than having a reduced version, so that the old version can't be there. But we do have the full record of them, but we wouldn't normally have an archive of older ones just because they could be misused.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Another question from Suraj: for additional testing conducted for current certificates, how much time will it take for review and updated certificates, or to review and update the certificates for any additional testing conducted for existing certificates?
I couldn't answer that. It would depend what the testing was. But if you want to get in touch separately, I can pass it on to estimating colleague.
Our team. Perfect. Yeah, Suraj, if you have a specific question or concern in mind relating to something on your side, let us know, and we can get the right people to answer that for you directly and more accurately. Did you want to add?
I was just going to say one thing is that we're going to have a couple of weeks at this point where, because we've literally just, the accreditation's just switched over, we're going to have a couple of weeks where there will be certificates that have already been drafted in the previous style that now have to be redrafted in the new style. So bear with us for the few weeks while we work those ones through.
Okay, yeah, so Suraj has also added it's related to creep testing. So Suraj, we'll make sure that we take that question back and get in touch with you. Yeah, we'll take that to the test team so we can get a more accurate reflection on that. Wendy, I like your surname, Wendy Roberts, similar, has also asked the question, will the BBA logo change for documentation publishing purposes?
No, it'll be the identical logo, so you don't have to update any of your labeling or marketing or anything like that. It was one of the things that was very important to us, that people weren't inconvenienced like that. Yeah,
perfect. Okay, then Vahid has asked the question, something we may have covered very quickly in the beginning, but perhaps we can spend 2 more minutes on it. What has changed that UKAS has asked the BBA to change their scope? The BBA certs has been around for many years and held UKAS accreditation for most of that time. What specifically led to the change of this, or has caused the change?
That's a very good question, which we wouldn't mind an answer to either. Essentially, I mean, the standard hasn't changed and the scheme hasn't changed. I think it's the understanding of it, perhaps, or the interpretation. And I know that I understand that UKAS were looking more widely at schemes in this area, construction products generally. And I think, as the industry as a whole has been looking at, certification and testing and different levels of products that are available. So I think it was just a fresh perspective. So whether that was the understanding of the scheme or a review of accreditation in the area generally. But yeah, there hasn't been any specific change. There hasn't been a change in the conformity assessment standards nor in the scheme. So it's just a reinterpretation.
Perfect.
I think it's not a perfect answer, but it's the best I can do.
But it's as accurate as we know. And Vahid has also added, I'm not aware that ISO 17065 is changing. That's correct, isn't it?
That's correct. It hasn't changed, no. So 17065 came out in 2012, and we've been, before that, we were accredited to 45011 Guide 65. It hasn't changed a great deal, even in becoming 17065, and it hasn't changed recently, no.
Okay. James Grace has just added a new question and also relates to testing. Will the new standard have an effect on the testing results needed to be presented to the BBA or the accreditation of the testing laboratory generating the results? Will that change anything?
No, it won't change that at all. So, I mean, our basic assessment strategy will say we're not going to be asking for anything different in terms of data. The principles of assessment are staying the same, and the test data requirement, the criteria for acceptance of test data, that's also staying the same.
So in all essence, the process, what is required, stays the same from a client's point of view. There's work on our side in terms of what how the certificate is positioned that will change, and that will handle as part of the review, the standard review process. So there's nothing that our clients have to do anything differently, or they have to, you know, meet new standards or requirements from our side to be able to move with these changes.
No, I mean there are some structural changes to the certificate. And which is partly to make it clear what the different sections are for the accreditation. And we've also now got a much fuller scheme document that will be on the website, and for HAPAS as well, obviously. So there should be more information for people about the process and the rules of the scheme. But no, there shouldn't be any additional effort for the clients.
Perfect. Thank you, Clary. I think that is the last question on the list. So unless there are any few last minute ones that come in, I'll give it literally 5 seconds. It's not to say that's last chance saloon, because as I said, if there are any other questions that do crop up, Francois, you don't disappoint. You just delivered another one. I was just saying, if there are more questions that pop up, you can just pop them in an email to hello@bbacerts.co.uk. Claire, Francois asked, I assume that the implementation of these certificates will add working load to the BBA. So do you expect more time for the delivery of Agrément?
We're actually getting as much as possible will be done by not by the operational teams. So we're hoping to take as little time as possible from the project managers and do as much as we can with technical admin instead.
Okay.
I think there will be I think there will probably be more challenges over just getting everything through publishing rather than the technical side. So I don't think the technical delivery will be badly impacted.
Okay. All right, perfect. Excellent. I don't see any other questions on that questions list, so I think that might be it. Claire, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining. We will. Oh, Vahid has come in with last one, and then I'll end it. Vahid has come in saying, granted, BBA works with a lot of innovative products, so it's difficult to create assessment criteria, but there's also a number of products for which a predetermined criteria can be put together. Why not keep the old scope for those? Claire, did you have any comments on that you want to just add?
We did look at how feasible it was, but it's not, although yes, you could potentially split out well-established products where there are technical criteria. There are so many products, and sometimes the criteria are different for different applications. So we did look at whether it was feasible to do that, but in the end, this was the approach chosen.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect. So thank you, Claire. We'll end the webinar there. We don't have any other questions. If you were late to the webinar, or if you've missed this or you'd like to rewatch it again, what we'll do is we will collate all the questions as well as a link to the video and any other information. I think the example certificates that a previous question came through on, we'll collate that all and we'll send it out via email as well to all of you so that you can rewatch it or share with colleagues. But again, as I said, if you've got any other additional questions to this, just pop them over to hello@bbacerts.co.uk and we'll make sure they are answered, collated, and then sent back to everybody. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to having you join us for the next one. But other than that, Claire, thanks again and have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Take care. Speak soon.
Thank you, everybody.